I think the title is self-explanatory again. I'm referring to 10 bands from the broader heavy rock scene, all of which are considered part of the wider metal landscape. And after presenting various arguments, I arrive at the obviously purely personal conclusion about whether they really are metal or not. Let's see what happens. He became known worldwide during two main periods of his career. Initially from the 1971 album Love It to Death, still as a band, up to 1976's Goes to Hell, his second album as a solo artist, and secondly, from Constrictor of 1985 up to Hey Stupid of 1991. Most of the hits of his career, his best-known songs that he always plays at his concerts, come from these two periods. Since 1994, there has been a continuous stream of albums belonging to the broader heavy rock genre in various forms. And in 2025, after 52 years, the Alice Cooper Group was brought back with the excellent album The Revenge of Alice Cooper. Consistent throughout his career are the horror-themed live shows that feature him starring in various performances that bring his songs to life. These shows, along with the completely dark themes of his lyrics, made him the founder and clear leader of what is called shock rock. The heavy metal community considered him a member since the mid-80s, and he has influenced countless musicians in the genre through his personality, image, themes, and the way he approaches shock, horror, dark, etc. For example, I can mention King Diamond, Rob Zombie, Dave Mustaine, or Dee Snider of Twisted Sister. However, beyond all that, if we look purely at the music, during his truly golden age, the 1970s, he played very little heavy metal, even in the primitive form it had back then. Songs like School's Out, No More Mr. Nice Guy, Under My Wheels, or Escape, at most. Someone might call them hard rock, but that's it. His second golden period was clearly closer to the idiom, although again more akin to the hard rock of the LA scene than anything else. For me, his most heavy metal moment of his career is the song Roses on White Lace from the album Raise Your Fist and Yell. His new era, meaning from 1994 onward, definitely has heavier coordinates, but no one remembers him for it. So, in 1983, my 10-year-old self, who was still outside the metal scene, definitely considered the Scorpions a fundamental part of the heavy metal universe. It couldn't be otherwise. No One Like You, and a little later, Rock You Like a Hurricane were the ultimate metal anthems. But times have changed. Music has evolved. And today I would probably approach this band and these songs differently. In reality, the Scorpions are a story of two bands in two eras. The one with Uli Roth and the one without him. In the first era, an album like 1975's In Trance, for example, one could argue was a key influence in the birth of the modern heavy metal sound, on par with a record like Judas Priest's Sad Wings of Destiny. We could also place the next two albums, Virgin Killer and Taken by Force, in the same category. How could songs like Catch Your Train, Virgin Killer, and He's a Woman, She's a Man be called anything other than heavy metal? Roth's departure and the arrival of Matthias Jabs changed the band's sound, bringing simpler, more direct structures and a sound closer to hard rock. Of course, this happened gradually. It began on 1979's Love Drive and was completed by 1984's Love at First Sting. For example, the three title tracks of the respective albums, Love Drive, Animal Magnetism, the heaviest thing Scorpions ever recorded, and Blackout, someone could still call heavy metal. From then on, however, the band clearly chose a path based on typical hard rock and occasionally glam metal, and never returned to their old days. As the Roth era had little commercial success, unlike the Jabs era, many people still consider the band to be essentially a hard rock artist. But Metal Archives doesn't even have an entry for them. So I'll finish here. Okay, I won't do it. If someone were transported back to the early 80s, they would see a band that is without a doubt member of the heavy metal scene of the time. Young people often wore jackets with AC/DC patches. While the Australians were featured in the pages of the most famous metal magazines of the time, also, there are so many heavy metal artists who have clearly been influenced by them. They are considered as a formative influence on both the new wave of British heavy metal and later on glam metal. If you listen to a song like Accept's Balls to the Wall, it's nothing more than a heavy metalized version of AC/DC, something we could also say about Danzig's Mother. Bands like Crocus, Helix, Airborne, The Cult on the album Electric, and various others have built careers by copying their sound. Many thrash guitarists have expressed their love for them over the years, and yes, their music and their attitude share many characteristics with the conventions and forms of heavy metal. The song structure, the two guitarists, one lead, one rhythm, the main riff that dominates the song, the distorted guitar sound, the rebellious attitude in the lyrics, the image of tough guys. However, we absolutely cannot call AC/DC a heavy metal band. The closest they ever came to playing heavy metal themselves was the song Hell's Bells. They were always a heavy rock and roll and blues rock band. Nothing more, nothing less. One could argue that they are the missing link between 50s rock and 80s metal. But that's as far as it goes. Therefore, honestly, I saw it written somewhere and was initially very surprised. Is it possible? I said. We're talking about a band with a guitarist who changed the way the style is played. One of the few guitarists in history for whom there's a before and after, who influenced thousands of guitarists who found their place in metal bands. How can we even consider questioning whether his band belongs to metal? However, if we look at things objectively, there are things we need to take into consideration. For example, the showmanship of the band's singer, David Lee Roth, wasn't common among heavy metal frontmen when the band started, nor it became common in the following years, at least among classic heavy metal frontmen. Also, the band's entire attitude was completely different from that of other similar groups from the very beginning. There was a joy, a happiness, a positivity in what the band did on stage, in the way they behaved, and in the aura they exuded. Many of the things they did on stage, as well as the way they behaved off of it, were more suited to a rock or pop band than a heavy metal band. But again, their first two albums changed the way heavy metal guitar was played, didn't they? Yes, but we can't overlook the fact that Eddie Van Halen gradually got tired of playing heavy themes, and we noticed that as early as Women and Children First, he introduces variety into the musical stylings he gives us. Their big hit, Jump from the 1984 album, is practically synth pop. Well, ever since Sammy Hagar joined the band, they played pure hard rock with elements of pop rock, or the other way around. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. Roth's return and the last album they made were somewhat a return to the old days, and we don't know where that would have led them, as the band never made another album in its history. One of the bands for which the discussion about exactly what they play is inversely proportional to the volume of work they left behind. Obviously, I won't bring up Chinese Democracy in the discussion because I consider it more of a personal album by singer Axl Rose. So here, we have a band that many metalheads definitely listened to, saw live, and bought their albums. countless magazine covers and metal publications, a fateful appearance at the biggest heavy metal festival of the era, a tour with Metallica that was historic for all the wrong reasons, and much, much more. And a story built on 3 albums: the debut, Appetite for Destruction, raw, wild, heavy, revolutionary in its own way, successively called glam metal, sleaze metal, or even a form of modern punk, and the 2 Use Your Illusion albums, on which the band plays 30 songs, tries literally every style on the block, including, of course, heavy metal. The whole situation seems very confusing, and to unravel it, we might need to look at the band's influences. Admittedly, the biggest is the Finnish glam rock band Hanoi Rocks, followed by Aerosmith, Rolling Stones, AC/DC, Rose Tattoo, Queen, T-Rex, New York Dolls, Van Halen, Black Sabbath, and a lot of punk. There's not much heavy metal in there, to be honest. Personally, I still consider Appetite for Destruction a release that had many characteristics that could attract the metalheads of the time. And to be honest, it turned a lot of people into metalheads back then, almost as many as the Black Album did a few years later. Although at its core, it remains a hard rock album. The metal moments of the 2 Illusions, although clearer, are completely lost within the orchestras, blues tracks, ballads, etc. And of course, the legacy the band left behind depends heavily on the continuation of their career, or rather the lack of continuation, and the fact that the times passed them by, while even today they seem stuck in what they did 35 years ago, which, to be honest, still pays the bills. The approach for the Seattle band is the opposite of all those that came before. For the previous 5 artists, the initial assessment and categorization were clearly metal, but the evolution of eras and sounds brought about a change in how they were perceived. Here, as the band was part of the grunge scene, the initial view was not only that they weren't metal, but also that they contributed to its fall, which, however, doesn't align with the band's actual music. Their first album, Facelift, kicks off with the massive Sabbath-esque riff of We Die Young and continues in that vein throughout the entire record. Their second album, Dirt, is heavy, dark, slow, and suffocating. And again, if there's a genre it's closest to, that's metal. It's definitely not the metal of Iron Maiden or Manowar. And the vocal harmonies and interplay between singer Lane Staley and guitarist Jerry Cantrell certainly bring to mind psychedelic atmospheres, while the term alternative could sometimes be applied before the term metal. And since grunge isn't a clear musical genre for me, but an umbrella term, ultimately, what else could someone call their music? Punk, alternative rock, noise, pop. We should also say that when the band made their big comeback in 2009, they essentially picked up where they left off on their self-titled album from 1996. And since we mentioned it, let's talk about guitarist Jerry Cantrell. He considers himself a metalhead, has often declared his love for Tony Iommi and Eddie Van Halen, has cited albums by Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and Metallica as his favorites, has performed on stage with Pantera, etc. So I think that when the band released their dubstep album, The Path of Totality, in 2011, frontman and leader Jonathan Davis stated that while he appreciates the scene, he doesn't consider Korn a metal band. So, we're closing shop and leaving here too, right? No, not exactly, as this particular album received a very negative reception. So the band quickly returned to what they do well, which is still primarily characterized as new metal. So the whole question is a projection onto a broader topic, namely whether new metal is metal. Attention, the question isn't whether we like it or not, it's whether it's metal or not. Korn's first album in 1994 revolutionized the heavy rock sound, offering something clearly heavier than grunge, to the point where it quickly replaced grunge, created new superstars, and sold millions. Their sound combined a bit of Rage Against the Machine, a bit of Pantera, a lot of Faith No More, funky bass, a hip-hop rhythm in the way the lyrics were delivered, pop sensibilities, and a touch of grunge. The signature sound will include down-tuned guitars and an absence of solos. The lyrical approach included quite a bit of dark themes, drugs, rape, bullying, murder, etc. Korn themselves will serve the idiom they invented for much of their career, although according to some, they will surpass it at some point. Metal magazines of the time covered and still cover them. They've won a Grammy for Best Metal Performance, although they have often tried to distance themselves from the scene by collaborating with hip-hop or alternative artists. I would say it's a special case, and how exactly each person views them depends on how determined they are to gatekeep and whether they believe music is evolving or not. For me,
Now, somewhere between the sacred silence and sleep.
you'll say, didn't you cover the new metal topic in the previous chapter? So I'll start by saying that System of a Down are absolutely not new metal. They were put in the category simply because they didn't have solos, but the core characteristics of their music have very little to do with new metal. What are those? Serge Tankian's distinctive vocals, which come straight from hardcore punk and the Dead Kennedys, Darren Malakian's unique guitar playing, whose influences range from the heaviest metal genres through simple rock and end up in things related to his Armenian heritage. For example, I recognize even Greek folk music within them. The highly politicized and socially conscious lyrics, and the unique way in which all of these elements come together to give us extremely catchy music. The band has a very unique trajectory. They released all of their albums within 7 years, from 1998 to 2005. From then on, it became clear that the members, and especially the core duo of Tankian-Malakian, were not on the same page. So they released a series of solo albums that never achieved the success of their regular band, which, let's say, technically never disbanded and continues to tour because somehow members have to make money. The metal world's attitude towards them has changed radically over the years. Today, I hear a lot of people expressing negative opinions about them, generally considering them to be purely a product of their time, an essentially overrated band that didn't deserve their success. There is a lot to discuss on that particular opinion, but the question remains, is it metal? Practically speaking, I believe that regardless of what anyone thinks of their value, and despite the fact that they experimented with other styles, particularly in their 2005 release, the Mesmerize/Hypnotize album Duo, I find it difficult to simply call their music rock. Some songs, yes, definitely. Anyway, their latest official release, the double single Protect the Land, Genocidal Humanoids, was perhaps unexpectedly heavy and aggressive. So, in conclusion,
And you speak. No one wants to hear you. No one wants to say.
an English band that, in the distant days of 2006, started as deathcore, then became metalcore, and later incorporated some electronic music elements, including autotune and post-hardcore into their admittedly catchy style, as expressed in their album, There Is a Hell, Believe Me, I've Seen It. There's a Heaven, Let's Keep It a Secret. Starting with 2013's Sempiternal, their sound began to evolve and became much less heavy. This album, with its blend of metalcore, post-hardcore, alternative metal, and electronic music. Its excellent production and a pop sensibility unheard of in metalcore at the time revitalized the somewhat stagnant genre and laid the foundation for what would later be called modern metalcore. From their next album, That's the Spirit, the band simply left behind any connection to their past and transformed into an alternative pop rock artist who very rarely remembered their heavy rock days, such as in the rather unexpected collaboration with Danny Filth on the 2019 album Amo. Of course, we should mention that these choices made them one of the biggest rock bands in the world, with 2 gold albums in America, a #1 album, 4 gold, and 1 platinum discs in their homeland, and headline spots at the biggest heavy rock festivals worldwide. They attempted a return to heavier paths on their latest album, Post-Human Next Gen. But okay, don't expect too much. Their influence is evident in countless modern metalcore bands of the era, from Poppy to Spirit Box and Bad Omens. To be honest, I knew from the beginning this was going to be the shortest section of the video, because for me, things were clear from the beginning.
Chemistry, close and dying to melt through to the heart.
Another English band that has made a huge impression in the broader heavy rock scene. In recent years, I've heard people call them the saviors of metal or the killers of metal. I'll start backward, talking about their latest album, Even in Arcadia, and the simple fact that it debuted at #1 in the UK, America, Canada, Australia, and Germany. While their previous album, Take Me Back to Eden, has sold nearly 1 million physical copies in America, which is incredible in the times we live in. They have been active since 2016 and remain anonymous to this day, with only 2 band members being known by the names Vessel, vocals, guitars, keyboards, bass, and 2 drums. They have a very distinctive image that definitely makes an impression as soon as you see it, as they wear cloaks and masks and have parts of their bodies not covered by clothing painted black. They have only given 1 interview to date. Their music now. It's what they say, you have to listen to them to understand. I'll try to describe it as best I can. It has indie, electronica, pop, and alternative, combined with almost gospel or R&B vocals on one side, and gent or progressive metal on the other side. I would say their music could be called progressive in a broader sense, as it exhibits a particular progressiveness and imagination, while often displaying tropes of what journalists call post, rock, metal, etc. Their productions are very good, and their sound is definitely fresh and particularly original. But even if I'm accused of gatekeeping, I'll say that a metalhead would have to be very open-minded to find anything truly interesting in what they're proposing. Even the formula they use, calm pop intro, metallic outburst in the middle or at the end, makes things predictable and therefore boring. And in the songs where there isn't a metal part, there's absolutely nothing different from what hundreds of other, quote, modern, unquote, artists are offering. In short,